Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are in the Japanese garden because there is a very beautiful Lagerstroemia farii growing here. And today we have a guest. We are doing a garden conversation. We have John Dole here, who is a professor at NC State University. One of his recent research topics is a citizen science initiative that goes about finding plants that grow particularly well in specific places. And let me tell you something, this Lagerstroemia farii is growing particularly well here. So it is a fitting setting for this garden conversation. We are excited to have Dennis Carey, our curator here, who's going to lead us through that conversation. And of course, John Dole, who will be taking part. All righty, and with the announcements out of the way, I think we can pass things over to Dennis to lead us through a nice little conversation with John.
All right, hello everybody. I'm Dennis Carey, curator. I'm here with Dr. John Dole of the North Carolina State University Horticultural Science Department. Researcher, lecturer, manager, author, and traveler, which hopefully we'll get to all of that stuff. I was real excited to talk to him when we were discussing who we were going to bring on for interviews. When we mentioned his name, I raised my hand and said, I want to do that one. Dr. Dole was a professor of mine back when I was an undergrad and also a grad student. I've taken 2 of the 3 classes that he teaches. And he was my academic advisor when I was a master's degree student, so a grad student. So I've had interactions with him for 20 years now. And so I'm really happy to be here today and talk to him and get to hear what he does and what he's about. And I get to ask the questions and do the tests instead of him now.
Seems only fair.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a quick intro of him. Dr. Dole is one of those people who got into horticulture early in life. As a high school student, he grew his own cut flowers and sold them at a local farmer's market. So he's one of the early adopters of the green life. BS from Michigan State, PhD from University of Minnesota, both in hort. And then he went, his first job out of school was, he was on the faculty of the Oklahoma State University Horticultural Science Department, which is a connection to the J.C. Raulston Arboretum because J.C. Raulston was got his bachelor's degree there probably 20 or 30 years before you were there, but still a connection. Dr. Dole has been here, John, has been here since 2000 as a professor. He has, like I said, taught 3 classes, a graduate level class called Physiology of Flowering, which I took and it was very interesting. He taught 2 or teaches 2 undergraduate classes, one on the production of floriculture crops, which I also took and it was interesting. I still have the textbook, which he wrote. And he teaches a class on greenhouse management, which I took, but from a different professor. So sorry about that. Okay. In addition to authoring the textbook, he's written several other books, some of which we will might bring up during our interview too. Butterflies. Yes. Okay, so his research is focused on the production of floriculture crops and the post-harvest physiology of floriculture crops. And I promise you, everyone, the first question I'm going to ask him is to define post-harvest physiology for everybody. And in particular, working with cut flowers, poinsettias. A lot of you who've been involved with the Arboretum for a while will remember Dr. Dole as the poinsettia guy with his poinsettia tie, which he didn't wear today.
I didn't wear it today, I forgot about it.
And there's lots of cool videos of him doing poinsettia stuff. But also research with vegetatively propagated cuttings. And we can go into that too. That's more of a wholesale nursery type of thing. He was the former director of the poinsettia trials here at the NC State. And we have several videos related to that. And I sent Blake a list at some point. He might drop a few of these into the chat. You can click on them and watch them later. And there's websites with NC State and their poinsettia trials as well. In addition to all that, if that wasn't enough, he was the director of the graduate program for the department starting in 2004. Like I said, he was my academic advisor when I was a grad student back in 05, 06, 07, 07, 08. I don't remember. And he was the department head in 2011. And in 2016, became the associate dean, followed by being the dean of the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. That's the college at NC State, CALS, what we call it, that horticulture and botany and crop physiology and soil science and all these other things are in. He was the dean of the whole thing. Got into management. Well, he's back now, back to doing research here. We're happy to have him back. In addition to all of that, he was a former president of the American Society for Horticultural Science. That is a society that publishes 3 scientific journals and hosts conferences for scientists to go to. And he's involved with 3 really interesting student type groups that we might be talking about in a bit. One called Seed Your Future, which is for high school level, right? And one called FAR Fellows, which is for graduate students. Mm-hmm. And another one called CALS Online Academy, CALS being College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, which is about distributing distance ed content from NC State and other colleges to community colleges and extension agents and things like that. So 3 very interesting organizations. Dr. Dole has been featured on our YouTube channel a couple of times. He did a talk for NARGS a few years ago called Discovering the Magic Flowers, which is on our YouTube channel. It was a very good talk. I listened to it entirety yesterday. And a buddy of his, a Dr. Faust, did a hour-long lecture on the history of the poinsettia, and which Dr. Dole emceed that talk, and it was also featured a bit in that talk. And it's a very interesting video. If you want to go look at both of those, they're very cool. So that's his resume. Congratulations, it's a really good resume. I'd like to start with the question I promised to ask, which is, what is post-harvest physiology?
Yeah, that's a great one. It is everything that has to do with getting a crop from the field or the greenhouse to the consumer. There's a lot of science there in terms of the physiology of the plants, of the plant materials, whether it be cut flowers or tomatoes or muskmelons. And there's a lot of techniques. There's a lot of equipment that's involved with that as well. It really is amazing. We go into the grocery store and we see all this produce and flowers, and it all looks great. And it's just, there's so much that went into getting that tomato there, that apple there, that bunch of gladiolas there.
Sure, huge amount of thought.
Yeah, yeah. And so I work with all of that. I'll add also, the words post-harvest. We think about it as coming after harvest, but a big chunk of what we also do is how the plant is grown affects how the products subsequently perform after they're harvested. In particular with cut flowers, we had a big project a while back where we looked at the conditions with which the plants were grown and how that affected how they then did in the vase for the consumer. So it starts right at the very beginning with planting all the way through to getting it to the customer.
Very good, yeah. And your particular focus was on cut flowers and poinsettias,
right?
In that, and also the vegetative cuttings,
right? Have been working with cut flowers really since I started as a faculty member in 1989. Cut flowers at the time had been moving to South America quite a bit. Excuse me, my allergies were. I love being in the garden, but I will have to say today was the day my allergies kicked in, so my voice might sound a little rough at times. And so I've been working with cut flowers since then. Poinsettias, the post-harvest of poinsettias as well. They are very cold sensitive. So we've done a lot with trying to figure out how to handle that.
Yeah, when I was a student of his and he was teaching me all this stuff, I'd go to Walmart and I'd see on a night where it was going to get down to 32 and they have all their poinsettias sitting outside, and I was this cocky student like, those aren't going to last. I just learned that in class.
That's right. And then with cuttings, a lot of our bedding plants, potted flowering plants, are started from small, unrooted cuttings that are produced in like Central America and then shipped into the United States. So with Jim Faust, my colleague at Clemson, who you mentioned earlier, we had a whole project on how to get those into the United States in a good condition. Because one box of cuttings can be worth thousands of dollars.
Sure.
And so if it gets messed up along the way, what can we do to make sure it gets there in good shape?
Yeah, when I was a grower, the nursery I was at, we would buy boxes of cuttings of this or that, annuals or whatever. And one box might have 5,000 plants in it, little, 2-inch fresh cuttings.
Right.
So you have to get them there quick and they have to be in good shapes or.
That's right.
Or it's, and you're paying 50 cents or $1 per cutting,
Yep.
Sometimes. So,
Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of all over the place from post-harvest Fizz for the end user, but as well as for the supply chain as well.
Right.
So for the end user, what kind of tips can you give to our audience? And audience, if you have any questions about post-harvest physiology, how to keep your cut flowers going well, please throw them in the chat right now and Blake will insert them. Do you have any tips for us?
Oh, of course I do. I love talking about it. If you're buying cut flowers from like a florist or a grocery store, you typically will get the packet, the flower food. Use it. It really works. Follow the directions. If it's a big packet, it might go into a quart of water, or if it's a smaller, it might go into a pint. Follow the directions. That has an acidifier, which lowers the pH of the water, which helps to keep bacteria from growing. It has sugar, which just like us, flowers need sugar to keep going. And then it has an antimicrobial agent, which again helps to keep the bacteria from growing. So it's all been formulated. So go ahead and use that. Recut the stems. You want to take at least an inch off, depending on how long the flowers are. Then put them in the water with the flower food. And then you generally want to put them in a bright but cool location. And of course, you want to put them where you're going to enjoy them. So, if the only place where you're really going to enjoy them is kind of warm, don't worry about it. Put them there. The main thing is you want to enjoy them. Cool and bright will help them last a little bit longer. And then after about 3 or 4 days, they probably will have used up all the water in the vase, and that's called the first drink. Okay, so when they do that first drink, then take the flowers out, recut them, and you can just use water after that.
Okay.
And they should last quite a long time.
And there's a lot of old, like put in aspirin or put some Sprite or something in the water, but that's the sugar and the acid.
Right.
Aspirin is acetylsalicylic acid, right? So
we have tried most of those old-timey remedies. They mostly don't work.
Yeah.
The one that does work, and we recommend this for folks who are harvesting flowers from your own garden, is lemon lime soda. It can be Sprite, which is, I think we use 7-Up. We actually use 7-Up. Or it can be the bargain brand. Can't be diet. It needs to be
real
fully loaded with sugar. 50-50 with water.
50-50? That's a lot of sugar.
Yep, and that usually will work for most flowers. So that's a good, of all the home remedies, it's the only one we really found was consistent. Most of them, some of them actually shorten the life of flowers. So a lot of what you see on the internet, well, we know that.
Yeah. Well, it's fall. Are there any post-harvest suggestions for the things we're buying now? Maybe the pumpkins that are on our front porch, or are the mums that I've already gone through a couple of?
It's the same thing. Temperature usually is the biggest determinant of how long something will last. So if you can keep something cool, then it'll generally last longer. So if you're buying we're just about on Halloween, but if you're buying something and you want to make sure it's going to be fresh for whatever event, put it in the refrigerator, cool it down. That'll help it last. Okay. Temperature is the biggest factor in terms of how long things last after the customer gets them.
Sure. Okay. Great. Now, continuing on with post-harvest Fizz, I want to transition over to poinsettias because everyone knows you for your poinsettias. Now, you're no longer working with poinsettias, is that right?
No, it was hard to give that up. I started working with poinsettias when I was a graduate student. And I worked in California for Paul Ecke poinsettias before I started graduate school so that I could get practical experience on growing poinsettias. So that was a really, really long time ago. Close to 40 years, we'll just put a number on it, when I was working at Paul Ecke. And then I've worked with poinsettias every year since then. I had been in administration and it was just too much to be able to continue to do the poinsettia trials.
Sure.
So unfortunately, I had to let it go.
Well, you've got a lot of interesting new projects coming up, so we'll talk about those, and I'm sure they'll be just as cool as poinsettias are. But I want to say there is I guess it's now a fallacy proven by you that poinsettias are poisonous, and it was proven by Dr. Dole on video. If Blake wants to drop that in the chat, we have a actual video of Dr. Dole eating some poinsettia to prove that it's not toxic, and he's still here.
Yes, alive and well.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
Yeah, that was one of those myths that started a long time ago. The Society of American Florists, SAF, tracked it down to one of the original reports that talked about poinsettias being toxic. And what they found was that it was a child. So of course, people are really going to be focused on children. The child had eaten all sorts of things, including some things that are known to be poisonous. I think it was oleander, if I remember correctly.
That's very poisonous.
And so what happened is the report listed everything the child ate, and poinsettias happened to be included. And so from there, it got on a list. And once it got on a list, heaven forbid it should ever be taken off. SAF and others have really tried hard to get it off the list. In fact, it isn't poisonous, and people will ask about their cats and dogs. And they say, well, they eat poinsettias and then they throw up. Cats eat stuff and then throw up all the time. That's just what they do.
They eat everything.
So it's not, it has nothing to do with the poinsettia per se. And then Jim Faust, when he came and did his talk, he had been traveling in Mexico, and he came across I think it was a restaurant where they were serving poinsettia bracts in the salads. So it's not poisonous. It really isn't. Now, as the video will show, they don't taste good.
Yeah.
That particular salad just used bracts, and I would love to try it, what they did with the salad. But a poinsettia leaf doesn't taste good. So it's not like it's going to be on anybody's salad bowl here. But they are not poisonous. So thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. So you heard it here. They're not poisonous, but they don't taste good.
That's right. Well, the leaves don't.
Yeah, the leaves don't. Okay. Yeah, and the colored bracts are used as a dye, right?
Yeah, they've been used as a dye. Yeah, the history of poinsettia goes back way far in Mexico. It's a very attractive plant, especially with the bracts. And so it has been used and shows up in their culture quite a bit.
Yeah, and that poinsettia video that I mentioned on the JCRA website by Dr. Faust does show a picture of a poinsettia salad.
Yeah.
And that was a very cool talk.
That was totally cool.
Yeah. And but there's another talk that you gave to another group. I don't remember the group, but it's an hour-long talk about poinsettias too, where you called them the most fascinating plant in the world.
They are.
Is that still?
I completely agree with that. Of course, I'm a little biased. Poinsettias have a lot of interesting botany behind them in terms of their physiology. How they got to market is very fascinating. I promise I won't redo the whole talk here. I did make the caveat at the very beginning. It's not the most economically important plant, but I do believe it is one of the most fascinating, if not the most fascinating plants, when you include everything about it, from its long, long history in Mexico to how it ends up on our tables for Christmas. So, yeah.
All right. If you have any poinsettia questions, we can take them. Just throw them in the chat and Blake will chime in with them. It's getting to be poinsettia season. I haven't bought mine yet, which I don't buy mine usually till a little later, but yeah. But you can buy an early season one, right? And I don't know if Homewood has them ready to go right now yet or not, but
I've not checked.
Yeah.
There are some orange ones, and they're getting more and more orange. We did a little bit with one cultivar to see about it for Halloween.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever took off Because again, people think of poinsettia for Christmas.
Sure.
But boy, it was a nice looking plant.
All right. So let's see. I wanted to talk to you about physiology. Let's move on and let's talk now about some of you're coming back to the department as a researcher. So I'd like you to talk about your current research goals.
Right. I continue to work with cut flowers. Even when I was in administration, I had a smaller project. Jen Kalinowski, research associate, she managed a lot of that for me. And so I'm continuing to work with cut flowers. What we're focusing on now is probably going to be dealing with cut flower quality. When the growers put a lot of work into making sure cut flowers look good, they cut them at the right time, and then they get on this journey to get to the customer. If it's a local grower, that journey can be fairly short. It can be a matter of cutting them on Friday, bringing them to the market on Saturday, and then the customer's homes that afternoon. But for a lot of flowers, that journey is much longer. So what we're looking at is how do we assess the quality of the flowers before they start that journey, in terms of the carbohydrate status. Are they pumped up enough with the sugars that they'll last long? Are they properly hydrated so that they can make that journey, because they're not going to get any water during that journey? And are they disease-free so that when they show up? So we're looking at how to assess the quality of those flowers before they start the journey, and then what we can do during that journey to assure that the quality stays high. So the idea here is we want to make sure that the customer, if it's a wholesaler, when they open that box, or if it's a homeowner, when they get those sets of flowers, that the quality is as high as it was when it started that journey at the grower's greenhouse or field.
What are some of the longer amounts of times that a plant might, a cut flower might be in transit? Before it gets to the grocery store?
Usually it's about 2 days.
2 days, okay.
So in terms of the transit period, one of the things that growers do sometimes, which I don't like, but sometimes they have to, is that they'll store flowers for a longer period of time before it starts that
before
journey.
They ship them.
And that can add some time to it, which we're trying to get to reduce that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The journey itself, from if it's going through air freight, is usually about 2 days. Keep in mind, again, if you're buying from a local grower, the flowers were probably harvested the day before, put in a cooler, and you're buying them, that morning to take home. So that's a very short journey.
That's amazing to think, though, that, a cut rose that I'm buying that was produced maybe in Colombia or something, 2 days later is in my Whole Foods and I'm buying it for my wife. That's just amazing.
It is, it really is fascinating. A lot of horticulture crops have these really amazing journeys, but yeah, flowers in particular, because they are so perishable. An apple, that's one thing, you got to keep it at a good temperature, but flowers, they can just die so fast. One of the other crops we work with, unrooted cuttings, like we mentioned earlier, they're even more perishable. These little tiny pieces of plant material
Desiccate very fast.
Just can die very, very quickly. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Other areas of research. You had mentioned we had a real nice talk yesterday preparing for this. You'd mentioned something maybe about working with the Arboretum.
Yes, just at the very beginning stages of it. I have long been fascinated by plants that, where plants do well and where plants grow. And, in my garden, I've, like a lot of folks, a little bit of zone envy. We've got a few things that are a little bit further north than they probably should be, and a few things that are a little bit further south than they probably should be. But it's more than that. And it started way back when I was giving a talk in Korea. One of the faculty showed me the thesis of one of their students that had just finished. And the student had meticulously gone around Korea and documented a number of woody plant species where they were grown. And they did these very detailed maps. And then they correlated it to different factors like low night temperature, average daily temperature, that sort of thing. But what was really cool was you could see the main range for the plant, and then there were these bubbles that were north. And those were the urban environments where the plant was surviving. And then on some cases, the range was to the north, and there were these bubbles to the south, and it was in rural areas where it was a little bit cooler. I've always wanted to do that. And I've talked with Mark about it, and Mark is, very much into this as well. But finally, we have the technology to be able to do that. And it's a program called iNaturalist. Our plan is to use the iNaturalist program where citizen scientists go out and they document plants in the landscape. It's mainly been used for naturally occurring organisms, but it is used for cultivated ones as well. So we're going to put together a project using that and then try to develop more detailed maps of where plants will do well. And we want to do it for gardeners. So when they buy something, they'll have a good idea whether it's going to do well. We want to do it for the industry because right now we rely heavily on plant hardiness zones and the heat zones. Those are so broad. It really, it's hard to differentiate too much within it. And then finally, there's really a climate angle to this as well.
Sure.
There's a lot of studies out there that have looked at the change of plants distribution based on natural, native plants. Well, that relies on quite a long time period. As the climate changed, the distributions change, but boy, you've got to wait for that plant to naturally move around. Well, we got people planting things everywhere. Every year plants are planted where they should be and where they shouldn't be. So we can now use that data to better show the changes that are occurring due to climate in terms of where plants grow.
So that's cool. So citizen science, so y'all can be involved at some point.
That's right.
Right? And all kinds of ornamental plants. That's really cool.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. Very interesting. And so the Arboretum's going to be involved in what way?
It's all going to be through the Arboretum.
Through the Arboretum. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And so you'll set up some sort of framework.
We're going to start
which-
small
Yeah.
with just the J.C. Raulston Arboretum volunteers
Uh-huh.
to make sure we get all of our details figured out and get
Okay.
our process figured
You
out.
got to work out the kinks.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there will be kinks.
Yeah.
And then once we get that figured out, we'll take it statewide. And then ultimately, we'd like to, assuming it works out, we'd like to take it, across the nation.
Well, with iNaturalist, it could be at any scope, right? Any scope you
iNaturalist
wanted
is
to-
worldwide,
Yeah,
so yeah,
yeah.
it's a great program.
Well, that sounds really interesting. I can't wait for that to begin and see how that goes. Okay, so we had also discussed kind of on the student side of things. You're doing some research involved with and some working with some organizations involved with students getting into horticulture, into botany.
Yeah, Seed Your Future is a group that we just had their 10th anniversary. It's a group that actually I helped to start when I was department head in horticultural science, and I was also very active with the American Society of Horticultural Science, which you mentioned earlier, which is the Society for Horticultural Scientists. We were concerned about the low numbers of students enrolling in horticulture. As department head, I constantly got questioned from industry of who's graduating, we need people, we need people, we need people. And we were concerned that the number of undergrads and graduates in horticulture was going down. So we started Seed Your Future, which is now run very well by Jasmine Albaran. So what we're doing with them is we just completed a salary survey documenting the salaries that you can get in horticulture. We do a periodic enrollment survey of the schools across the country. So it is time, we do it every 5 years, time for that again. We'll be doing an internship survey, trying to figure out what it is. One, how we can get more students interested in internships, what the industry wants to know. A lot of businesses already do internships. Some are thinking about it. We want to make it easier for them to be able to host interns. So trying to put all the pieces together. Internship is one of the key factors that employers look for when they hire students. Excuse me. And we want to make it easier for students to be able to do internships, and we want it to be able to make it easier for industry to offer more internships. And so that'll be all part of the projects that we're doing with Seed Your Future.
Well, that's excellent. What's the view of student enrollment in Hort? How's that going right now?
In our department here at NC State, it's actually doing very well. When I started in 2000, we were a little over 200 students I think 220. Of course, that was a long time ago, so I might be remembering that wrong. And then it gently declined till just a little bit lower than 100. And now, if I remember what Helen Kraus said, undergraduate coordinator, it's back up around 180.
Okay.
So we are definitely on the way back. The jobs are there.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that we've been trying to get across to folks is all the breadth that horticulture encompasses in terms of the jobs. One of our former students, Allison Carlson, just gave a seminar this morning, and she listed all the types of jobs they hire in Syngenta for horticulturists. And there was like 18 different jobs that they hire, you know, folks with horticulture for. And, you know, we tend to think of folks mowing lawns, or if you watch the national news, you almost invariably will get the image of huge field and somebody picking tomatoes, for example. That is definitely part of what we do. But the typical student coming into college, there's just dozens of other jobs besides those that they're going to do. And most of those other jobs, of course, are what they're training for. You know, it's the science, it's the managerial part of it.
Yeah.
On Seed Your Future website, they've done a really great job of listing all the various careers and jobs that are possible through horticulture. And it really is an amazing list. So we like to think about it not only in terms of the horticulture, but also for those students who have other interests. So Hort Plus, because some folks, you know, they have a gift of the gab. You know, they're just natural marketers. So horticulture and marketing. There's a lot of jobs for sales folks in horticulture.
Yeah.
So, you know, the engineering part, horticulture plus engineering, because of course all that equipment, not only the post-harvest, but the greenhouse. And then we could go, you know, area by area, and there's a set of jobs that bring together the horticulture and other disciplines as well.
For sure, yeah. And like here at the Arboretum, we're an aspect of horticulture called public gardening.
That's right.
And we have a lot of specific needs. You know, we have horticulturists here, but we have business folks, marketing, you know, we have accounting needs and all kinds of stuff like that.
Plant records.
Yeah.
All sorts of definite skills. So folks having a love of plants and have other skills, you know, you can really bring those together in a lot of ways.
Sure. And your other group, Far Fellows, also is working with people on their skills, soft skills, right?
Yeah, that is a PhD, professional development program. It's a national program. It's funded by the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research. It came out of interactions with the industry. They were, you know, PhD students come out very well trained, you know, in their area. And industry was wanting them to fit in more smoothly, more quickly into industry aspects. So what this program is run by Rebecca Dunning. So what we're doing there is helping them acquire those skills so that they can fit very seamlessly into whatever, you know, industry jobs, but also government, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, or academia, because we do know that a lot of students do go into academia. But, you know, most of my PhD students, for example, have been hired by industry and are working in industry. So we're very keen to make sure that they can make that transition very smoothly.
Cool. Very good. And the other one was Cal's Online Academy. That's distance ed opportunities.
That's distance ed. That was started when I was an associate dean. Kim Allen is now taking care of that. The idea there was to bring some of our introductory courses, one in each discipline, into a very proactive distance model. You know, a lot of new technologies available now to make distance ed courses very engaging. And so we wanted to bring them in. It dovetailed very nicely with some of the needs that Extension was having. Extension was hiring a lot of Extension agents. And so let's say a horticulture agent ends up in a county. Quite often they're going to get questions about a lot of different aspects. And so we wanted to be able to provide very engaging ways for them to get that information without having to take a whole other set of classes. But this is high quality content that will allow them to get up to speed in those other areas.
Very cool. Very cool. So working a lot with students of all types to further the horticulture industry. So, and that's a huge, huge thing. That's just part of his, you know, job, right?
Yes.
Just
yes.
part of what you're doing.
Yes.
All right, so you're doing post-harvest Fizz. You're teaching too, right? Still
Yeah.
going back to teaching?
Physiology
more?
of flowering.
Yeah.
That'll be the grad class. That'll be this spring.
Okay.
I taught that even while I was an administrator every other year.
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking forward to. I had to skip it this past spring, but I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah. That was an interesting class. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I love teaching. It's a fun
Yeah.
class.
It was very small. It was a grad school class. My class had maybe 10 people in it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It fluctuates usually between 10 and 20.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so all right, so I want to switch gears and kind of go back towards the garden.
Okay.
And I hear you're some sort of butterfly expert. I was wondering if you talk about butterflies.
Yeah, I love plants. And I've also loved birds and butterflies. And I've been an avid bird watcher. And after a lot of bird watchers also get into butterflies, and that was definitely the case with me. So I've been enjoying butterflies. Golly, when did I start really getting into them? I always noticed butterflies like everybody. And I knew the monarch and a few others. And then at some point that switch turned on. It's like, I want to know what that one is. And so I really got into identifying and then photographing butterflies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened when I was at Oklahoma State University.
And you have a book that you published at that time.
Yep.
About butterflies. That's not Butterflies of North Carolina, though.
No. The book is, two friends and I did it. And it's the butterflies of Oklahoma, Kansas, and North Texas.
Okay. All right.
So the most common butterflies in that area.
Okay.
So it was a lot of fun. One of my friends, Walter Gerard, great photographer. So he had a lot of the photographs. And John Nelson was a lepidopterist by training. And then so three of us came together and put together this book. And it still sells. It's amazing. 2023, I was, back in, this book was done, God, when did we finish
90s,
it?
I guess, huh?
Yeah, early 2000.
Okay.
20 years ago. And I thought by now, there would be no more books. But it's surprising how many books still sell.
Yeah, you like the physical feel of a book. I do, at least.
Yeah.
So if you have any butterfly questions, especially those Texas ones, go ahead and ask them in the chat. Do we have any questions?
We did have somebody ask a question about cut flowers after we had moved on from cut flowers.
Oh, we can
Oh,
go
we
back
can
to
go
it.
back,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Diane's asking, is there any reason spent cut flowers should not be added to the compost pile?
No. I think where that question comes from is that some of the treatments for cut flowers to make them last longer. But no, it's perfectly fine to put them in the compost pile. Nothing that they're getting is going to cause any problems. So yeah, it's perfectly fine.
For sure. I can't think of a better place to put your spent cut flowers than the compost pile.
Exactly. That's where all mine go.
Yeah.
When we do big cut flower experiments, when everything is left over, that all goes into the compost. Yeah, there's no reason to waste all that good plant material.
Yeah.
No kidding.
All that good organic matter.
Sure.
Feed your soil.
Exactly. I've got at least two fresh mums in my compost pile right now at home. So, all right. So, any other books you're working on? You've done butterflies. You mentioned you might do another butterfly book, right?
I'd love to do another butterfly book. That will be a while. I've got a couple of other projects ahead. The first one is Specialty Cuts, which is a book for specialty cut flower growers. Alan Armitage and Judy Lauschman, they're the original authors. They've done 2 editions, and I'm working with Judy on the 3rd edition.
Okay.
And so we're about halfway done with that. That'll be for the cut flower industry. We're working on a history of the Horticultural Science Department. Sylvia Blankenship and Tom Manako have been working on that.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
And I'm going to help them finish that up. And then at that point, I want to do a 3rd edition of the Floriculture Principles and Species, which is the big overall floriculture book. So yeah, I've got a bunch. I like to write.
Yeah.
And so this is one of my happy places.
I had a real nice conversation with Tom Manako 10 months ago. I did my own lecture about the history of the Arboretum.
Oh, okay.
Before it was an Arboretum, and he and I talked about that.
Good.
He had a lot of good information.
Yeah.
Let me go through his old Arboretum folder files from when he was on the job and
Good.
pick out some cool stuff.
Good.
That should be really interesting. Yeah. All right. So, how are we on time?
We got time.
Well, I have so much more I don't want to go over.
We have 13 minutes until it's been an hour.
Okay, cool. Then I'm going to lead into the last two subjects.
Okay.
First one is you just got back from a really cool trip.
Yes.
And I was hoping you would tell our audience about your really cool trip.
This was one of those bucket list trips. Madagascar. Been wanting to go there for years. When I got into administration, it got really difficult to do it because it's someplace I wanted to go and spend some time. And so with administration, being out of the office that long was not going to work. The fact is, it's a fairly poor country. And so, I was totally without Wi-Fi and cell phone signal for long periods of time. And again, that wasn't going to work too well with administration. But I planned it after I knew I was going to be done being interim dean. In fact, that was sort of my gift to myself for doing the dean stuff. It's a fascinating place.
Yeah. Plants and birds and butterflies.
Plants and
right?
birds and
Everything we talked
butterflies
about.
and
lemurs.
Lemurs. Yeah, it was a nature trip. Focused a lot on the birds and the lemurs. There's some gorgeous, gorgeous birds.
So you added some, you knocked some off your bucket list. All the
Yes.
birders have these lists of birds that their lifetime lists, right?
Yes,
What
ones
are they-
that
what are
we've
they called?
seen. And then I also have a list of really cool birds I want to see.
Yeah.
There's about 12,000 different species of birds. I'm not going to see them all, but I want to see the pretty ones
Yeah.
or the unusual ones.
Sure.
And Madagascar had several that were in that list.
Cool.
Let me give you a couple names so if people can Google them. Sunbird Asidi, which sounds like I'm swearing, but I'm not. A-S-I-T-I, Sunbird Asidi. Google that one and you will see why I was wanting to see it. There's a couple of other birds in that particular group that are just fascinating. Gorgeous, gorgeous, with all this adornments and stuff like this. There's a group of birds called the kuas, which got all these beautiful, different color skin on their faces.
How do you spell cool?
Kua, C-O-U-A.
C-O-U-A. Okay.
So yeah, just type in that, you'll see some of those. There's some birds called ground rollers.
Okay.
So Madagascar has split off from Africa and from Asia a long time ago. So it has a lot of plants, animals, and birds that are unique to Madagascar. The lemurs, of course, a lot of people know because of the cartoon. And so we got to see a lot of these are gorgeous, gorgeous lemurs. I mean, and there's some big ones that are like monkeys. What happened is they radiated out to fill a lot of the different niches that other mammals, so there's small lemurs that look like squirrels that fill the niche of squirrels. There's larger lemurs that have filled the niches of monkeys, that just hop around and, just to see them, with the young hanging on as
Sure.
they go through the trees. Yeah, very cool.
Awesome. How long was that trip? Were you there like
It was 3 weeks.
3 weeks? That's
Yep.
a long time.
Long time. Fascinating plants. The periwinkle,
Uh-huh.
the vinca. The official name is Madagascar periwinkle because it's from Madagascar.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw some of the wild ones there.
Which is my favorite annual.
Very
I
good.
grow it
You
every
need
year
to
in
go
my
to
yard.
Madagascar.
I do, yeah.
Some of the Bismarck palms, which are beloved, these really large, gorgeous leaves, fairly slow growing. Some of the Bismarck palms have a very gray cast. Those are native to Madagascar. It's another one of their signature plants. So we got to see all sorts of Madagascar palms. And then baobab trees,
Yeah.
just some funky, funky baobabs.
Yeah, they are amazing. Huge, huge trunks, right? And really cool
Huge trunks.
architecture. Yeah.
Lots of orchids, some just along the roads.
Oh, yeah?
Just orchids growing along the roads. So
How fun is that?
Yeah, it was really nice.
Now, we have a few orchids here in North Carolina, right? And some of them might even, like Sporanthes, might even grow along the road, but you'd never notice it.
Right. No, these were, Madagascar, like a lot of islands, has a wet side and a dry side. And so we got to see a whole range of plants.
Awesome. Sounds like a fun trip. All right, and I want to finish up with, I want to talk about your home garden. I understand you have a really cool home garden.
Well, I think so, but I'm totally biased.
Yeah, of course, of course. And so, of course, our audience are all home gardeners,
Right, right.
mostly are. And so tell us about your home garden and what's in it and what's cool about it.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a labor of love with myself and my husband. A lot of folks know John Bittner. We both love gardening. We have ornamentals because, of course, I am a floriculture person. We've got an orchard of sorts, and then we've got the vegetable garden part of it as well. We've really, over the years, focused a lot on unusual fruits.
Like?
So we've got the typical ones: blueberries, raspberries, blackberries,
Okay.
figs. We also grow pawpaws.
Yeah.
We grow kiwis, the fuzzy kiwi, which you should try. It's a monster of a vine, but if you got the room, actually he's been doing very well. Hardy kiwi, which is a more northerly form. It's also
And
called kiwi
fuzzless.
grape. It's
Yeah.
fuzzless.
Yeah.
It's about the size of a Concord or a Thompson seedless grape,
Okay.
and you just eat them like that.
Awesome.
Gummies,
Gummy.
which are cherry gummy, which is about the size of a grape.
Okay. Is that a tree or a shrub? Or
It's
what
a
is
big shrub.
Big
It's
shrub?
a big shrub.
Okay.
And productive to the point of obnoxious.
it? Yeah.
Just lots of fruit. Makes a great jelly. We grow rosella,
Okay.
which is
Hibiscus,
a
right?
herbaceous plant. It's hibiscus.
Yeah.
If any of you have ever had hibiscus tea, it's the hibiscus in hibiscus tea. Grows very well here.
Yeah.
You can use it for tea. We use it for jelly and jam, blending with a lot of fruits. It has a very tropical. It tastes and looks a lot like cranberry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real tart, right?
Yeah, it's like
and
a tropical
to
cranberry.
make the tea, it's the sepals, isn't it?
Yep. Well, the calyx. Of
The
the fruit.
calyx. So yeah.
They're very thick and fleshy, and they're
Mhm.
very bright. They're very rich red.
Mm-hmm. Is that hardy, or do you have to bring that in? You have to protect that.
I started early and then planted out. It needs a long season.
Mhm.
It's also a short day plant. So it is right now producing lots of fruit.
Okay.
But it will grow all summer long, and you'll see nothing on it. And then September it'll start, and then October, just, man, there will be. Also, last night I picked cocona,
Cocona.
which is a relative of the tomato. It's from
Okay.
South America. It's another one that needs a long season. It has a pineapple-y, fruity flavor. It just makes really the
Is it
best
small?
jam.
Is it big? Is
It's
it
we
applesauce?
have two different
Yeah.
varieties. We have one about this big, and then we've got a bigger one, which is the size of an apple, and that's the one we think is really going to work well.
Where'd you get the seeds for that from?
You can buy them. There's several companies that
Are
will
they?
sell them,
Yeah.
and so and we've been holding seed over as well.
Right.
So it's actually a solanum, so it's most closely related to eggplant,
Mm-hmm.
but it has a very fruity flavor. And
Okay.
then when you add sugar to it, really brings out the fruitiness of it. So it's very nice.
Neat.
Yeah, you got to
Awesome.
cook it.
Yeah.
Fresh, it is sour. It is
Okay.
really, really sour. It's like, man, it takes a moment to unscrew your face, kind of sour. So yeah, but when you add sugar to it, it's really great. So that's what we've been picking lately.
Yeah, I just tried one of the apples that's growing in the Arboretum here. We have a tiny little micro malice. The fruit's about that big, and it's also pretty tart.
Pretty
But it
tart.
wasn't too bad.
We've got a couple of crab apples that we
Yeah.
use quite a bit. Crab apples, like apples on steroids. But what I really like there is making applesauce like half regular apples, and then you really punch it up by adding crab apples to it, because
Ye-
crab apples add some tartness and a lot of flavor. So
Yeah.
there's some good crab apple varieties out there. Apples are a little hard here. 'Cause
Yeah,
we're
they
a little
can
too
be.
warm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying
Yeah.
with the apples.
Sounds like you have a pretty big orchard then. with
Well, we
all
have an
those
acre
things.
that's cultivated.
Yeah.
We just pack a lot into it.
Okay.
Cornelian cherry,
Yeah.
where finally ours are getting big enough to fruit. That's very nice. Got a whole variety of figs. Of course, we got blueberries. We got grapes.
Yeah.
Not
Muscadines
vinifera. Muscadines,
Yeah.
several of those, as well as what we call Americana.
Mhm.
These are the Concords and some of the hybrids with Concords.
Okay.
That we've got some table grapes, which
Yeah.
seem to be doing pretty well. One called Victoria Red from Texas. It's a nice white with a little bit of a red blush.
Hmm.
Makes a good table grape.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So there you go. Everything you guys should be planting for your own fruit garden. You have a big vegetable garden too. Any cool veg?
The more the tried and the true there.
Yeah.
Love walking out and harvesting fresh corn. So corn, beans, tomatoes, peppers, lettuce.
Yeah.
The usual stuff there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Any questions from the audience about his garden, his writing, butterflies, poinsettias, students in horticulture, research?
You didn't mention jujubes. You growing any jujubes?
We do.
Yeah.
Yes. We've got a big tree of those.
Nice.
Those are dried a lot of times, and I've dried them, and I have not they've not really appealed to me.
No kidding.
But I like them because it's a mild flavor, and we have started adding pureed jujube to like some of these really tart fruit that blends them out. Like cornelian cherry is very strong, but if you blend it with jujube or jujube, then it makes it really good. Persimmons, we've got a native persimmon.
Nice.
I need to pick those tonight.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to work out persimmon. It's not my favorite.
No?
I am going to try some.
Why isn't
persimmon
it your
jam.
favorite?
Well, a little bit of astringency still comes through even when they're ripe.
Come
So
on.
I still taste that. I'm working on it. The native one we had is a pretty good tasting one. So I'm thinking that might be the one.
Nice.
I was just on a hike this last week going around Lake Crabtree, which is not too far from here. And I saw a native persimmon in fruit, and the fruit were even dropping. It was, but I was on one of these bridge overwalk things, and I couldn't reach and get one, but that was cool. And we have a jujube in fruit. I ate some of those a few weeks ago now, but you have to fight the ants for them. You have to find the one that does not have ants crawling out of it, and then you can eat that one.
For sure. And they were starting to ferment there on the tree really quickly. It was kind of hard to find one that was ready to eat there, but they were fun. It was
they were.
A neat little discovery.
Sure.
When I was in Madagascar, we would go by the markets. And what was a lot of fun was seeing the different fruit, most of which, is fairly similar to here, but they had mulberries.
Yeah.
And we have been working on trying to figure mulberries out. We've got a cultivar of mulberry we love, very good tasting fruit, fairly big fruit, but it leaves out so early, it often gets frozen. So we're trying to figure out how to get it reliable. We've tried some other mulberries. There's some from the north, they don't like our heat. There's some from the south that aren't cold hardy. But yeah, we're trying to figure out mulberry. Because mulberry is a really rich tasting fruit.
Sure.
That, it's good on its own. And then like mulberry, strawberry jam, good stuff. So yeah, that's one that comes to mind as well. We're trying.
It sounds like we have a topic for a future talk, a fruit salad from John's garden.
One of the things we've done, and I don't want to run over here, but with kiwis, which the fuzzy kiwis store pretty well, we can have fresh fruit 12 months a year from a garden here in North Carolina if you grow kiwis, because those are the ones that carry you through, January, February, March.
Awesome.
Until the strawberries start in spring.
Do you grow strawberries?
We grow strawberries, of course.
Okay. There you go.
Somebody did have a question about cut flowers. They were wondering what are some cut flowers that last the longest, just because they know they take some that only last a day or so.
Yeah, so one of my favorites, and it's really long lasting, is called Lisianthus. It kind of looks like a rose. It's actually one of our native prairie flowers that has been developed into just a stunning array of colors and color patterns. So when I have to bring flowers, if we are doing work with Lisianthus, that's usually the one I will bring because I know it's going to last a long time. There's a few others, like Eucomus, the pineapple lily from the garden, as well as, that's commercially grown, will last a long time. Roses have gotten a bad rep, but actually a well-handled rose will last a good 10 to 14 days. So actually, carnations, some of the more tried and true. There's a reason carnations became so popular. They're very durable. And there's so many gorgeous new colors. Chrysanthemums. So really the big three, roses, carnations, chrysanthemums, they got that way because they last a long time. So if you get them fresh from the supplier, they will last a long time.
And you had a cool story for me yesterday about one that your team got sick of because it lasts so long in the vase.
Yeah, we've done work with cut poinsettias, the series called Renaissance Red, and it lasted weeks. Because we take data every day. Then after a while, it's like, I could really, Ingram, when she was technician, I could just see her willing. It's like, die, die, die. She was just tired of taking data. After about 4 weeks, they get pretty tired of collecting data.
But that's a particular type of poinsettia. It's not just any old poinsettia.
The curly bract ones last the
Curly
longest.
bract
The
ones.
flat bract ones, they're about 7 days.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Alstroemeria, pretty good, right?
Very long lasting, great flower, a lot of colors. Yep.
Okie dokie. One thing, Marilyn put a comment here that you need to go to Century Farm Orchards near Reedsville to buy apple tree varieties because they have a bunch that have done well in the Southeast for over a century. We actually had a Friends of the Arboretum lecture back in September, I believe, where we invited somebody who just wrote a history on the history of apple cultivation in the South. And basically what I got from that is that there are a lot of apple varieties that do well in the South. It's just we don't select for them anymore because commercially they aren't viable.
Right.
But there do exist varieties that are perfect for North Carolina that were bred specifically for this region, and they do wonderfully, and even some that will last all the way through winter. Like
Some of the good storage areas.
And they were
for
delicious
sure.
too. I was at that talk. The Pippin series ones were really good.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
the Pippins. Oh yes, can't beat that. But yeah, so Century Farm Orchards near Reedsville. They are a friend of our Arboretum, and they can get you some apple trees that might just do well in your landscape.
The two we have, Gold Rush and Arkansas Black, which give us some. We like more because we like the apples, of course. Yeah.
I need to try Arkansas Black. It just has such a romantic name, I feel like.
You're
but
right. It's a very dark skin.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
rich red.
Awesome. Well, that looks like that is all the questions that we have in the chat, and that is all the time that we have for today. So I just want to say thank you, John, for coming out here and having this conversation with us. It was absolutely delightful. It was splendid having you on.
Well, thank you. Anytime I can be with plant people in a garden, it's a good day.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. Thanks for
Awesome.
coming out.
Yeah,
Really
and thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Dennis, for organizing all this and leading the conversation and doing all your preparation ahead of time so that it
Having
can be
clipboard and everything.
Very
a
well.
wonderful,
Official.
wonderful time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We will be back next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. It will be the first Wednesday of November, if I'm not mistaken. So we will be going over our November gardening tasks. Be sure to join us for that. We'll see y'all then. Y'all take care.